Airbnb should never have worked. The CEO knew nothing about business. The idea had been tried before and was even illegal in many cities. Even the company's own founders did not believe it would work. Yet, against all odds, Airbnb became a billion-dollar company and one of the biggest business success stories of the digital age. They are the world's largest accommodation provider but own no real estate. Chapter 1. Unemployed. Brian and Joe were on the verge of being evicted from their apartments. The rent was overdue, and they were out of money. However, they knew that a popular design conference was coming to town in a few weeks, which meant thousands of people would be heading to the city and hotels would soon be full. That's when they had an idea. Designers will need a place to stay, and we literally have no money. In fact, I don't even know how I'm going to pay the rent. What if we created a bed and breakfast for the design conference? They had 3 inflatable mattresses and decided to try charging people to stay at their apartment for the weekend. To advertise, they created a basic website called Airbed and Breakfast using a free WordPress template. Hardly anyone took it seriously, but as hotels did indeed fill up, Brian and Joe managed to get a few people to pay to stay with them and, surprisingly, it was great. They showed their guests around the city, took them to their favorite restaurants, and everyone had a great time. Brian and Joe made about $1,000 from the 4-day conference, enough to pay the rent and give them more time to think of a real business idea. Airbed and Breakfast was not the big idea they thought would pay the rent, so they had enough time to think of the big idea. Thus, Brian and Joe began to think about what their new, revolutionary business might be, since Airbnb was never meant to be a serious, long-term thing. As they tried to come up with new business ideas, Brian spoke to his mother, who was worried because he didn't have a job. "Mom, I'm an entrepreneur," Brian explained. But she just said, "No, you're unemployed." And she was right. Brian and Joe had no groundbreaking business ideas, so they went back to the Airbed idea, which had been a lot of fun. Then, they thought maybe other people would want to make money renting inflatable mattresses in their apartments too. So, Brian and Joe recruited their old roommate, Nathan, a programmer, who would help them create a more legitimate and professional site where people could make money renting inflatable mattresses in their apartments. And so they relaunched their bed and breakfast, advertising it as a new lodging service for sold-out conferences. But most people were very skeptical. In fact, they only managed to get 2 paying customers, one of whom was Brian himself. The biggest problem was that people did not want to list their homes. Many thought the whole idea was some kind of weird social experiment. However, the 3 founders believed that if people really tried it, they would see that it could be a great experience. So, when they learned that 75,000 people were coming to the Democratic National Convention where Obama would be speaking, they decided to relaunch Airbnb once again to try and drum up some publicity. And this brings us to weird business lesson number 1 from Brian Chesky. If you launch and no one notices, you can actually just keep launching. And so they just kept launching. Before the conference, they contacted every blog and journalist they could to tell them about this new service they were launching, called Airbed and Breakfast. Because it was quite a quirky idea, some people wrote about what they were doing, which caused some big newspapers to pick the story up as well. Soon they had so much traffic that their website crashed and PayPal banned their account for receiving too many payments too quickly as people rushed to book apartments for the conference weekend. But once they resolved those issues, they were excited. Hundreds of people were listing their rooms on the site and others were booking. They had proof this could actually work. The only problem was that, as soon as the conference ended, people stopped booking rooms. They were back to square one, with no customers. They needed to find a way to get people using the service all year round, not just at big conferences or events. Brian had never heard of angel investors, but his friend explained that they could give money to help grow the business in exchange for a part of the company. So, Brian scheduled meetings with different angel investors, which were terrible. One investor they met at a coffee shop simply got up in the middle and walked out of the meeting. The big problem was that their idea seemed too risky. Allowing people to rent space in their homes to complete strangers seemed like it would end in disaster. And their business model involved just a small transaction fee on each deal. If you had heard this investment pitch in 2008, you probably wouldn't have invested either. One by one, the investors turned Brian down. Little did they know that if they had invested $150,000 at the time, which was what Brian was looking for, today that investment would be worth billions of dollars. It was literally one of the greatest investment opportunities, It's just that nobody could see it yet. The turning point for Airbnb was entering the Y Combinator accelerator, where it soon began to receive significant investments. With access to funding and expert advice, the founders saw a real chance for success for Airbnb. The company expanded rapidly, removing previous restrictions that limited hosts to only renting air mattresses and providing breakfast. By simplifying its name to Airbnb and improving the quality of the property photos, demand soared. The vision of offering an authentic, local experience set Airbnb apart from traditional hotels and other short-term rental sites, contributing to its rapid growth. Additionally, the company benefited from launching after the 2008 recession, connecting people who wanted to make extra money by renting available space with travelers looking for cheaper options. Airbnb continued to innovate, investing in technology such as machine learning and a robust payment system, which further increased the security and efficiency of the platform. Global expansion was facilitated by a business model that did not require owning properties, reducing expansion costs to new markets.